A very good afternoon and welcome to this program. I have with me in studio this afternoon um, Anil Nandlall, former Attorney General and candidate of the People's Progressive Party for the 2020 general and regional elections, which is due in just over 10 days. Mr. Nandlall, you're in studio today due to some recent developments with regards to preparations for the elections, and I understand that there are some issues with regards to the number of polling stations for the March 2nd elections. First and foremost, if you can outline to us what exactly is the issue here?
Well, Eddie, I think a convenient point to begin is to first appreciate that GECOM has a duty to create an environment which fosters and encourages voting in a peaceful, orderly, smooth, and comfortable manner. Democracy is nothing short of that, and it is GECOM's responsibility to ensure that voters get the opportunity to exercise their franchise in an unfettered, unhindered, and unaffected manner. If the circumstances are such that it becomes burdensome, it becomes onerous, it becomes inconvenient for an elector to vote, that can amount in law to a denial of that person's right to vote. It can amount to a suppression of that person's right to vote. And that's why constitutions and the laws all around the world are crafted in such a manner that whatever right is conferred upon a citizen, that right must be easily accessed and enjoyed without undue fetter, without undue impediment, and without undue hindrance. So against that backdrop, GECOM has a duty and a responsibility to ensure that they create the necessary apparatus and they create the necessary atmosphere to make voting conducive, make voting free, make voting free from fear, and make voting comfortable. Anything short of that would amount to an abdication of GECOM's responsibilities. Against that backdrop, GECOM has a responsibility to provide polling places throughout the country, but not only merely to provide polling places, but to provide polling places that are easily accessible to the public, that people can vote in comfort in, and they must be of such number that will prevent unnecessary impediments, for example, people standing in long lines, etc. In the discharge of that responsibility, in my respectful view, having examined the situation in certain parts of the country, I am of the considered and firm view that GECOM has failed abysmally in the discharge of that fundamental function which the Constitution and the law devolve upon GECOM. We have had a voter population increase based on numbers on the list alone to the tune of 90,000. GECOM has only increased the number of polling stations by some 40. Therefore, you are allotting into this increased number one polling station to some over 2,000 persons. That is unacceptable when one considers the way Guyana demographic is distributed. We are not a society where there is a condensation of population in large buildings. For example, in other countries, you may have an apartment building that has 200-300 people. We don't have that in Guyana. Our people are living in a spread out way, to speak loosely. And therefore, it's the responsibility of those who administer the electoral process to ensure that there is a fair and equitable distribution of voting places based upon the population of that particular geographic location, so that to facilitate, foster, and encourage smooth voting. And in this instance, I believe that GECOM has faltered badly, not only in terms of a shortage of polling stations, but in terms of concentrating polling places in a few areas, many polling stations in a few areas, thereby creating an unnecessary preponderance of voter accumulating at those few locations come voting day. And we have raised this issue, first of all, with Mr. Lowenfield in the form of a letter, because we got a list of polling stations very late. In addition to that letter, myself and our executive secretary, Comrade Zulfikar Mustafa, met with Mr. Lowenfield. And we sat down and we articulated our concerns in great details. I gave Mr. Lowenfield physical and real examples of where these polling places are going to be located, vis-a-vis distances from different parts of the village or villages where voters will have to traverse to reach those polling stations, and also the number of persons that will be converging to vote at those polling stations. Mr. Lowenfield gave us, if I am to go by his demeanor, gave us the distinct impression that a case was made out for a review of these areas. And I'm going to deal with the specifics. I want to deal with the general first. And promised us that he will go physically on the ground, because I point out to him, I said, you can't sit in an air-conditioned office, isolated from where the problem is, and make decisions. For example, he did not know that Monrepo Primary School and Monrepo's nursery school are located in the same area, the same compound, so to speak. And you have the entire Monrepo, a totaling of approximately over 7,000 votes converging there. He didn't know that. In 2015 elections, for example, we had over 10 polling places, not polling stations, polling places in Monrepos. And I pointed that out to him, and we had no complaint whatsoever. He said to us that, look, a decision has been made to reduce the use of residents. I said, okay, but I did a Facebook page now, and those who are looking at this program can go to my Facebook page where I extracted from certain areas, for example, Festival City, Northram Veld, Samantha Point, Caneville, Duncan Street, where private residences have been used. And they coincidentally happen to all be PNC or APNU strongholds. And that leads one to the conclusion that this is not a mere coincidence, but seemed to be some plan with a design to make it advantageous for the supporters of APNU, as opposed to making it disadvantageous to supporters of the PPP. Because these are areas, not, let us take Guy Hawk Park or Festival City. These are areas that are located in Georgetown. You must have a lot of public buildings around. Monrepo, for example, there is a paucity of public buildings, I agree. But I understand your rule not to be a total elimination of public buildings, but to use public buildings only in places where you have no other alternative. I refuse to accept that there are no other alternatives in Festival City. And if you go through the post that I made, you will see how many private residences have been used in Festival City and in North Rumveld. And why is why are other parts of the country, for example Monrepo, for example Fowles, the same rule is not being applied? In Fowles, for example, there is not a single public building, and they are refusing to use private residence. They are places of worship. Why not use that then? Because they use that in Caneville and in Samantha Point. So how come you use it at Caneville and Samantha Point, and there's a mandir in Fowles, and Fowles is a huge, very densely populated village, comprising of about 20 odd streets, densely populated, thousands of voters, and they refuse to use a residence, refuse to use a mandir, which can be considered a public place, and you have people voting in tents on the public road. And that is the position in relation to Fowles. Good Hope is another village about 2 miles in length, stretching from north to south. It's about over a mile in width, densely populated, 28 streets. The only public building in Good Hope is a nursery school. The nursery school is about 30 feet in length by about 20 feet in width, relatively small building, and that's the only public place that they are using as a voting center. And the other, they're using tents in playfields, and I'm going to deal with the tents in playfields shortly. But in Good Hope in 2015, we had about nearly 10 residences that were used without incident, no complaint whatsoever. And though 10 residences were used, the nursery school was also used. And the line at the nursery school was several streets in length. Because these are areas, Eddie, that I work in for nearly 20 years now. Very, very closely. I know these areas like the back of my hand. I know where they're located, every village, the capacity, and everything. So when we met with Mr. Lowenfield, I explained all of that to him. And I got a distinct impression that we would have succeeded in getting him to effect certain changes. Lo and behold, late the following day, we receive a notification from him that he has basically rejected all of our proposals excepting one, right? And there are so many other things that I can point to. Lusignan, for example, another huge village. They're not using any residences, and because of that, they have identified and put a polling place to be at the Lusignan prisons. Now, the Lusignan prisons, Eddie, anybody who has ever gone to Lusignan would know that the Lusignan prisons is about 4 miles from the public road. It's about 1.5 mile minimum south in the backlands, away from the closest voter. It's a deserted road that goes past the golf course, and then you meet the prisons. Now, there's a prison that by itself carries certain connotations and would evoke some certain kind of sentiments in voters. And then is a prison that is located in the most desolate part of the village, away from where everyone has to vote, where everyone lives. And there is no transportation there. So every single person will have to find a taxi or a minibus to convey them to exercise their rights and franchise. Whereas we have never had, historically, a recorded problem with private residences in any of the areas that I am referring to. Yet GECOM has, without any sensible explanation, refused to use private residences in these areas, but in other areas, they are using it. Look, I can give you another example. Chesley in Region 6. There is a public place, which is a Muslim school in a mosque compound, So that can be considered a public place because it is considered religious place of worship have been considered to be public places in other villages. So I don't see why it can't apply. The rule can't apply to Chesney. And in Chesney, there is not a single place of poll. So the people of Chesney will have to travel 3 miles going to Albion at another private premises called the Kamal's Orphanage to cast their ballot. So you are taking them away out of their community 2 or 3 miles away to vote at another private premises. Why not use the private premises right there in Chesney? These are aberrations, irrational decisions. They can't be justified on sensible and reasonable grounds. And GECOM must answer. GECOM must answer.
But I'm seeing, I heard everything that you said, but I'm seeing, I think the chairperson of GECOM defended the decision to move away from private residences. And I looked at your post, and I looked at one occasion, for example, in Duncan Street, and the proximity of polling stations in some of these areas, 2 of them close together with maybe a smaller voting population.
First of all, there's an office of the president building, or a building that bears the sign of Ministry of the Presidency being used as a polling place in Bel Air Park, Barima Avenue. So that by itself raises a whole host of questions. Can such a place be used? Can we use, I mean, it belongs to the state, I hope, but that is the center of executive power. The office of the president or the Ministry of the Presidency is the epicenter of executive power. Those who are holding executive office is a contestant at the elections. How can a polling place at a minimum is supposed to be neutral? And I presume that was one of the reasons which guided the decision to reduce the use of private residences. Though I am arguing that they have only reduced it selectively. But how can in my mind, I haven't looked at the law closely because I've been so busy today, but there must be something fundamentally wrong. Instinctively, I am thinking that something is fundamentally wrong with an office of the president building that currently houses some aspect of the operations of the office of the president being used as a polling station. So that's my first fundamental difficulty. My second fundamental difficulty is that there is assuming there is a proper place to be used as a polling place, a stone throw away. I am telling you, Eddie, not more than 400 feet away, there is a private residence on Duncan Street, which is the street that runs parallel to Barima Avenue, is Duncan Street. And on Duncan Street, almost in the same line, same wavelength, with that building, is a private residence. I don't know, I can't imagine that a private residence and that other building would be accommodating more than 200 voters. Why you have them so close? And is it that GECOM wants us to believe that there are no other public buildings around Duncan Street in Bel Air Park area? Because look at the distances that the people of Monrepo, the people of Good Hope, the people of Fowles will have to travel, the people of Lagrange. Lagrange doesn't have a single polling place, a huge village, and the people will have to vote at Baggotsville. Baggotsville is a stronghold of APNU. Now, we can't be blinded to the reality that at election time, there are certain degree of hostility which arise between supporters of the PPP and supporters of the PNC. The environment becomes tense. Anyone who wishes to deny that, I believe, is a fool. So you have to recognize the peculiarities and idiosyncrasies of our society. GECOM has to, and make proper accommodation. It is unthinkable to have the people of Lagrange an entire village and not have a polling station there, but the people must have to go over to Baggotsville to vote. That to me is, having regard to our climate at election time, is like throwing gas on fire. You understand? But the original, I branched have to deal with that issue. The original point I want to make is that how is it in the areas that I have identified, they are going to such length to avoid the use of private residences, and you don't see that degree of rigidity being applied to the principle, or that principle being applied with the same rigidity in other localities, which happen to be, and I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt, which happen to be coincidentally places of support for APNU. I mean, there's too much of a coincidence for one not to believe that there is some clandestine, ulterior design driving these decisions.
But how do we move forward from here? I mean, persons, we were just above 10 days from the elections, and what you identified there clearly raised a lot of red flags with regards to the movement of people and large numbers of people at one place of poll at any given time. How do we move forward? Because persons will want to exercise their franchise.
Eddie, it's a very serious problem. I have not dealt yet, though I've spoken about all these matters, I have not dealt yet with the average time that a voter will be allocated to cast his or her franchise, having regard to the number of people who are waiting to vote there. Take 7,000 people in 12 hours voting at the same location, though in different polling stations, but at the same building. It's a school. The corridors are very small. The polling stations are going to be many, of course, but they are going to be in classrooms. The classrooms can only be accessed by a common corridor. So at the end of the day, there will be a line in those corridors to reach to the classroom, which is the polling station. How much time and how many people will get an opportunity to vote from 6 to 6?
But based on my calculation there, if you use the 7,000 and at the 12 hours, you have just over 6 seconds to cast the ballot.
6 seconds! Do you know how long it takes to take out your ID card out of your wallet? For the purpose of and then finding your name on the folio? And the people got to examine you and see that you are the right person. Then they have to give you a ballot that you have to inspect to see that it is stamped. And then they have to go and put you in that place to vote, the booth. And then they have to administer the ink. And then they have to ensure that the ink is properly imprinted. That is a minimum a 10 minutes process. Check how many people are going to be. You understand what I'm saying? And the observers who are here to observe these elections, I assume that they are not here to perform a perfunctory function. In other words, they are not glibly here to just look on. I presume that they intend to work assiduously to ensure that elections are free and fair before they are held, and not to write a report thereafter, ex post facto, lamenting that elections were fraud. Preemptive strike, prevention is always better. So I am hoping that we can persuade the international observer teams that are here, we can persuade the Commonwealth technical team who are located within GECOM, and the IRI and the specialists from Canada. We have one from India, one from Africa, one from Canada. They are all working within GECOM. These are experienced people. They know what I'm speaking about. They know about the rights to vote. They know about the facilities that must be extended to a voter by law. They know about how voters must be encouraged and how the atmosphere and the apparatus must be conducive. They know all these things. And I am hoping that they will intervene. And Eddie, look at what the damage that can be done if these issues go unaddressed. So you weigh that on the one hand, and what is the risk on the other hand? In which area that I have spoken about, PPP strongholds, have there ever been a recorded incident of irregularity at a private residence? The areas that are on the East Coast that are most affected are areas. East Coast is an area in which I have worked for the past 20 years. And I dare anyone to point to me any recorded incident where an allegation of irregularity have been made on the East Coast in a PPP stronghold area. I challenge anyone who is listening to me. I would know because I have been there for all those elections. So I am saying to you that there is absolutely no risk that the process would be exposed to if 2 or 3 private residences are included, as have been done and more have been done in other areas. Anything short of that, Eddie, would be discriminatory treatment of the electorate.
Based on using the calculations of 12 hours by 60 minutes, that gives you 720 minutes for the 12 hours. And if you give persons 5 minutes to vote, based on my calculations here, at each polling booth, just about 144 persons may be able to vote. I say that to ask you the question, what has been the construct in previous elections in terms of the number of polling stations and the average number of voters in each polling station?
Now, one factor that you may not have taken into account in your calculation is the number of polling stations that are going to be at those polling places, right? We got to draw a distinction between polling place and polling stations. So I can't remember offhand how many polling stations are going to be located at Monrepo Primary School and Monrepo Nursery School. But that is, I don't think that is a major point. The thing is that the people have to go into a compound, one area. They have to travel from so many different parts of the community to go to one area. And then they have to line up in 2 buildings. Both buildings I'm familiar with. I attended Monrepo Primary School. One corridor, and the classrooms are there one after another. And that is where the jam up will be. That is where the traffic jam will be. And there is nothing you can do to avoid that. So you can't tell me that because 100 polling stations is one access to the 100 polling stations.
The one corridor.
Is one corridor, one exit and one entrance. And anybody can go and visit the school and they will see what I'm talking about. So that is why I was very pleased when Mr. Lowenfield said that he will go and visit. I even gave him contact information for a former employee of GECOM on the East Coast that used to run the Collington operations. And I said, talk to this gentleman and let him take you because he's knowledgeable about the area and of the area. But that didn't thing. But each polling station there has a list attached to it. So that list will have, I don't know what is the average now, but there is a limit. A polling station should not have more than X number of of voters, right? I think not by law, but for convenience. But if you put 100 stations in the same building, then you defeat the purpose. Especially when that building does not have multiple access. You understand what I'm saying? So that is the problem. We used to have in Monrepo you see, Monrepo is a huge area. You have from the seawall to the public road, from Agriculture Road to Good Hope, and that's just in north of Monrepo. That's the area that's called Jango Town. That's the market side, that's the entire that side.
Yeah.
Beginning from Agriculture Road, ending at Good Hope by the canal. Then you go over the line, over the public road on this side, like the market, that stretches again from the Agriculture Road to the canal.
And you go to the line.
And then you go to the line. Then you break off there and you go over. And then you have to go all the way down.
And that, I think, is in 3 sections. You have
Yes.
Block 8.
No, I haven't reached Block 8 yet. I'm going to deal with Block 8 just now. Then you go down. You have Monrepo, what you call a squatting area. Then Richardsville, Monrepos. And then you have Marthasville, which is the same size as from Monrepo line to Richardsville. Or even more. That goes straight down to Guyana School of Agriculture. And then to the west of that, you have Block 8. And then Block 8 ends about halfway, the distance to the public road, and then you have Block CC. So you're talking about a huge area, very densely populated area. Good Hope is the same thing. Then and Annandale. Annandale is a huge village. You have Corbin Park, you have Annandale North, Annandale South, Annandale West, and then there's a housing scheme now that's built south of the railway embankment. That's part of Annandale too. All those people have to go and vote at Annandale Primary and Annandale Secondary School. And again, those schools are located adjacent to each other at the northern extremity of the village.
Almost to the seawall.
Yeah, on the seawall. You know. So you will have another long set of traffic coming from all over the village. And there is no reason for that. There is absolutely no reason for that. Now, if the entire country was going through that process, then, you know, I could not have objected. But that is not the position. And then you have certain communities, Eddie, that are, by their historical evolution, they have more public building than others. You understand what I'm saying? There are certain, and BV, for example, Better for Acting, which is a neighboring village to Monrepo. Better for Acting will have about 25 public buildings because a village that predated Monrepo's historically because of the slavery and our historical evolution was there 100 years before Monrepo. So they have a health center, they have a community center, they have a community high school, they have about 5 or 6 Christian primary and secondary school, nursery school, there's a market, there's a whole host of public
building
buildings.
in the NDC
The
building.
NDC building, the post office, the library, all of those are public buildings. And then come across to Monrepo, you have just the schools. Go across to LBI, just the school. So you got to look at our historical and social reality. There are certain villages that will have more public buildings than others. And you can't, that's why the rule can't be complete abolition.
But let me before you go
of private residence.
let me ask you this. Based on what you were saying there, you have, and I think a lot of people are familiar with Monrepo and the size, but right behind Block CC, you have the Guyana School of Agriculture, which could have been used.
Though I think Guyana School of Agriculture is being used, but that is going to be used. That is being used to accommodate agricultural residents.
And the people further down.
That's correct. You remember that road, that agricultural road, which is considered Triumph Village,
You have a whole
goes down for about another 2 miles.
Yes.
So you have you have a Guyana School of Agriculture, people going there to vote, right? So the thing can easily be avoided. All we are asking is to use back the polling places that were used in 2015. Look, didn't the APNU win the elections in 2015 elections? The same apparatus that was used, they won with it. And I don't know why they are mortally afraid. They are afraid of the same list. Remember how much problem we had? We had to drag them to the elections. They claimed that they did so well, but they didn't want to call elections after the no confidence motion compelled them to call them constitutionally. So they pissed around for like a whole year. They're still illegal. Then they didn't want to use the same list that we used. Now they don't want to use the same polling station that we used. And they won the elections based on the same apparatus. You understand what I'm saying? So they can't say that this thing worked against them. But I don't think that is the thing. The decision lies ultimately with GECOM, an autonomous body. And GECOM cannot take positions that not decisions that are not partisan, but appear to be partisan.
I want to ask you in closing, though, what will you say to voters come elections day? Because there seems to be no indication from GECOM that they intend to change any of this. If it doesn't change, what will you say to GECOM, to voters in closing?
Well, in my view, and based upon my simple assessment, the PPP voters are going to be affected more than any other grouping. And I say to PPP voters that once again, you are being the underdog. And that should inspire you even greater to succeed. So, as they are building more obstacles, use that to strengthen your resolve. And I speak, today is Shivratri, a very powerful day in the Hindu calendar. And it's a day that signifies the destruction of evil and anything that is bad. And here it is that we are being confronted with what is evil, what is bad. And I am appealing to our supporters to build their resolve, strengthen their resolve, strengthen your determination to go out to the poll. Because we will not allow them to use this to defeat us. People's power must never be held back. The power of democracy must never be thwarted. We have come too far. We have struggled too hard. We have won too many battles for over the last 5 years. And we will win this one. And that is my message to our supporters. We will win this one.
Anil Nandlall, I want to thank you very much for being here to shed some light on the current situation. And of course, as this issue develops, whether or not new information becomes available, we will keep you updated. Again, I want to thank you for being here, and I want to thank you for joining us. Have a good rest of the evening.
Thank you very much.